Okay. Welcome everybody. So this is a session we looked very much forward to, although it's very exciting times, maybe too exciting times. So, academia in times of geopolitical change. My name is Tor Elvik. I'm a professor at the University of Bergen. I am by no means a specialist in this, but I like to chair sessions like this and ask things I wonder about. But first, we're very honored to have our Minister of Higher Education and Research, Sigrun Aasland, who will give the opening remarks. Please.
Thank you. Great to be here at, I can't think of a more important venue in these days than this particular venue. The melting of polar ice is the biggest change of nature to affect humankind in modern times. And it's affecting us in many more ways than the changes that we are seeing in nature. In the last few months, we have been witness to one of the big tankers sailing not the traditional routes from China to Europe, but the polar routes, illustrating to us the Istanbul Bridge on its journey that climate change and the changes that are happening in the Arctic are affecting nature, but also trade routes, also relationships between countries, and security. And I think we've been reminded also of the latter aspect in the last few weeks. These things are related. And to understand what's happening in the Arctic is considered by my government a global responsibility that we take very seriously, being the eyes and the ears in the north of the whole world. We have recently launched a major research program, Polar Ocean 2050, where we involve 18 Norwegian research institutions across disciplines, with a great focus also on recruitment of students and new talents. It is a program where we are gathering the best and the brightest to understand everything that is happening in the Polar Ocean and the Arctic. And what is new in this program also compared to its predecessors is the strong emphasis on social sciences and on understanding how power structures and international relations change in the face of the changes that we are seeing in nature. Now, when all these changes happen, it's difficult to see where it's all going. I think many of us are feeling uncertain about the future and uncertain even about next week or next month. But what we do know is that investing in understanding, in research, in data collection is our best bet to stay safe, to preserve and protect nature, and to understand and strengthen our relations. And the polar research is also an area where we very much want to have international partners join, and we already have several international research institutions collaborating in this project and doing important research alongside the Norwegian institutions, for which we are very grateful. Now, as we are also going to be discussing today, in this new geopolitical context, I think it's safe to say that we have moved from a world where everything was to be exchanged and shared and traded to a situation where we are more selective, where we need to be more closed and less open on certain topics, on certain technologies, and where we also, as a matter of security and economic security, need to develop our own technologies and our own solution to a larger extent. That has to happen alongside research, which is by nature international, which is by nature collaborative and open and sharing. And so in a recent white paper that we issued from the Norwegian government, we said that our ambition is for research to be as open as possible and as secure as necessary. Now, this is a balance that we all have to work and develop together. It's an important balance. I think it's also a balance where we are seeing great engagement and very broad understanding of how we can make sure that we share knowledge, that we step up our knowledge in investments, that we step up our knowledge collaboration, but in a way that is both preserving the very pristine environment that we're researching in the Arctic, and that is ensuring that we are indeed as open as possible and as safe and protective as necessary. Now, nobody said this was easy, but nobody went into research to have an easy life either. So I'm looking forward to this discussion that you will be having. I want to thank you for your interest, engagement, and hard work in understanding the Arctic, understanding the North, with all its implication of the rapid changes that are happening, for embracing collaboration, international collaboration, collaboration between business and research, and also collaboration between our policy makers and research environments. We need all that going forward. I want to thank you for putting together such an important conference and session on a pressing topic. Special thanks to the organizers, the University of Tromsø and the University of Bergen. And it is indeed through conversations such as these that I think we can all together learn to maneuver our common quest for investing sufficiently together and safely, and keeping this important research as open as possible and as secure as necessary. Thank you very much, and best of luck with your work.
Thank you very much, Minister Aasland. So, now it's my honor to call up on the stage the very competent panel we have gathered here today to help us explore this. So, first, Ambassador Mike Fraga, Chancellor of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, please. Camilla Brekke, Director of the Norwegian Polar Institute. Jonas Stein, Vice Rector, University of Tromsø, the Arctic University of Norway.
We should start charging people for our...
Lise Øverås, President of the European Academy Science Advisory Council, and also a professor at the University of Bergen. And last but not least, Arild Moe, Research Professor, Arctic and Ocean Politics of the Fridtjof Nansen Institute. And as we get well into the panel's conversation, I plan to give the audience some opportunities to give questions. But that's under one contract. These questions are short, and they have to relate to what goes on the stage. Okay, you guys ready? So same goes to all of you, and then Jonas, you have a go at it first, Camilla, Arild, Lise, and Mike, but you have the same one, and you explore it as you like. So, as we said in the invitation to this event, these are indeed times of geopolitical change and uncertainty, including for the Arctic. So how do we, as academia and research institutions, change or not with this? And from your perspective, what is most at stake these days as you see it? Jonas, you have the first go.
Yes, thank you for the invitation, and thank you all for coming. Yes, things are changing. I think that's true, and I think we have, especially here at our university in Tromsø, we have experienced a lot of changes. A lot of people here where we've been invested for decades in cooperation with Russian universities, which were cut overnight after the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. That has changed the life of many of our researchers, many research programs, and many of my colleagues have had to change their entire project and maybe change, getting new partners and change the direction of the research. Today we see something, I think reckon Mike is going to come afterwards. There's a lot of changes that happen to American politics, which they attack on certain institutions, but we still see that for our university, the country that we publish the most with is American university. So they're central to our research. So even though there's a lot of trouble and uncertainty on the higher level, I think we can still maintain that there's a lot of cooperation going on at a researcher level that we'll still need to continue with. Because even though some of the people have changed on the top, people on the bottom have not changed.
Camilla?
Well, the minister touched in on this. I think that multilateral collaboration is at the core of science, but in these days we also have to think about responsible research, international collaboration, and I believe that research security is not anymore at the perimeter of science. We all have to take responsibility for that. And that goes that we don't want transfer of information that is not wanted. We have to keep an eye on integrity of the data, on the ethics and all that. So it has been there all the time, but now it's very much in focus.
Adel?
Well, I come from a social science institute, political science, and where the situation is slightly different. There is something in common with the natural sciences we just heard about, and this the changing framework conditions for research. We are also affected by lack of access to data, typically from Russia, cooperation, and so on. But the main change for us is maybe the object of research, because we are interested in what's going on, and we are studying the turbulence, which is also changing the framework conditions. So that, I would say, is the main thing. We are studying new things. We are studying hybrid threats. We are studying false statements and such things that have come up as essential in today's situation.
Lisa?
Well, I think as academics, we are used to changes. So we are used to working in a changing environment. What is striking at the moment now is that there are so many changes happening parallel. So that's a new condition for us. And then you get uncertain on the landscape, the scientific landscape, the trust to scientists, also the collaboration with different partners. Who are you collaborating with? Who are you communicating with? And also this academic autonomy that is also pressured under these changing time that we're facing now. So I think it is so much happening, amplifying. So we have an amplification in the Arctic on the temperature, but also on the science and the academic work.
Mike?
I think I want to come back to a theme I raised last evening in one of the presentations, and that is now more than ever, at least for all of us, I think, but especially for me in the United States, I have to work really hard to effectively communicate the value proposition of research and science. Now more than ever. We always had to, as an academic, we're all used to writing proposals and trying to get the attention of policymakers and most importantly the funders of research and science. So you have to have some value to society, some value to basic and applied research. But now more than ever, not only are institutions like mine competing in a competitive process for proposals and trying to fund them, but we're also competing in a value proposition embedded within other needs of a country, but within a far more dynamic political system where there's a lot of noise, and you have to break through the noise, and you have to give the value proposition as to why the country or region or state should give you the money for research that you can prove to society there's a benefit for. And I think that's really important. It's always been important, but it's doubly important right now.
Yeah, so if we stay with you for a second, so these turbulences, or maybe the US administration is changing approach to academia and particularly universities. How does it look from the institutional inside? Can you say a little bit more how you experienced the last year from the inside of US academia?
Sure, yeah, it's been, obviously, here's some obvious terms for you. It's been turbulent, it's been unknown, it's been unsettling, I can keep going, but I won't. But it's been all of those things, and the pressure on our faculty and our staff and our students and the missions that we have to serve our communities, that's real. And we've all had to navigate that in very different ways. we have spent, at least at my institution, a lot of time trying to impress upon the administration, but also members of Congress, the appropriators, those who provide the resources, that, again, that value proposition is there. So I've started to talk about research security. Yes, it's IP, it's infrastructure, it's data. Make sure your data is clean. It's all of those things. But now research security means something fundamentally different. It means securing the resources to conduct your work. So research security is a predictability. It is having predictable funding that's enduring through political turbulent times. We spent a lot of time internal to my institution ensuring that we had the best position for our faculty and our research infrastructure so that we could navigate the times, but the pressure is real because the unknown is significant.
So are you settling for maneuvering the present, or do you see some, if not predictions, pathways for how this will evolve in the near and longer term?
So I think last evening I said it a couple of times. I'm guarded optimist. I'm a guarded optimist about now and years out. Here's why. The administration had proposed significant cuts to the nation's research and science capacities and capabilities currently and into the future. They would have devastated U.S. research, and that would have devastated our cooperation that we rely on. But Congress stepped in, and Congress stopped the cuts and actually allocated resources, passed the bills just a few weeks ago, to keep research funding in the United States basically flat. So at the National Science Foundation, I think they got a 1 or 2% cut to the budget. But what was proposed was almost a 50% cut to that budget, which would have devastated not just Arctic research, just research. So I am optimistic that Congress, as they should, are regulating not just allocation of research dollars, but they are serving as a governor to sort of a diplomatic approach to science, but also they're allocating resources to science in a way that is not as drastic as it could have been. They have stopped what could have been really, really devastating to the scientific community. So that's a long answer to a short question, but Congress has stepped in, the money is there, and that's why I'm optimistic that at least we will have resources going into the future, but we're still going to have to communicate better each year the value proposition.
Yeah. So panel, this is where we try to just gear into the conversation. So at any stage now, if you want to comment, okay, Jonas.
Yeah, I can continue that because I think there's two things that's interesting what Mike's just said. The first, I think for us as Norwegians, we see a lot of the noise. We see Trump is invading Greenland. We see putting out new memes about what he's going to do with Greenland, et cetera, Then suddenly it's in Venezuela, and now it's the Epstein files going on around. So there's a lot of noise happening there. But there's also some really interesting thing that is happening under the noise, and that's good. But at the same time, I think there's some fundamental things that you actually have to be in a position that you have to do, like you have to do the sort of the basic. You have to do the basic conversation about why do we need more science? Why do we need more research? And you have to do it, I think, and that's probably, talking to what Ari also said about that, there's probably going to be a change for a lot of places with all this fake news, with all these things that are happening in the world, with all the need for more money for defense. So I think we're entering a phase where we as researchers have to spend more time convincing our politicians, our funders about the necessity of science and research. I think that's going to be a big challenge in the future.
So regarding where we see things from, Lisa, so you had an increasing involvement now over years in international, and particularly European science advice, now being the president of EASAC. So what is the most striking difference between being central in formulating, let's call it European consensus perspectives, and Norwegians seeing the world from Norway?
Well, I think Norway sees it from its strategic position and its responsibility and our autonomy. What I've seen working with all the joint academies, national academies in Europe, I think it looks more interconnected system, and also looking more into the overall vulnerability of EU system there. So I think you have, I mean, both of these things are good, but I think in the time where we are at the moment and things are shifting, I completely agree that we need to promote the science and convince the politician for the science is important, but I think it's difficult to reach the platform when you're doing it one by one. So I think by having, especially at this time when also a lot of the system democracies are decreasing, it is important to join forces here and to make approaches throughout the whole European platform as we are working. But we also see that international with Academies International, because it's the same things that is happening that we're seeing. I mean, we're focusing on the Arctic now, but the trust in science, the fight for the resources to do science. Do we really need the science? Don't we know enough already? Can't we just continue and innovation, all these things? So this to work, and also the independence of the science and the scientists. So I think at the moment, I think this is really good to have these connections and interaction. And also, I mean, we see also, I mean, it's the collaboration with US scientists is challenging, especially institutional, also with Russian. It's easier but from scientist to scientist. But we can't just wait for things to become better. So we need to find alternative routes, ways of working through, and also, I mean, keeping that also together, but we need to have other ways of working. And then this I really see that joining forces here is a good way to at least have the same interest for this.
Yeah, I'd like to add that also the social sciences have a role in regard to what Mike talked about, communicating the value of research, because it's not only enough to communicate the value, but also you need to communicate the relevance of research. And I think that is a field where social sciences and the natural sciences meet. And we who are in the social sciences should be very, very careful with pointing out where there are, I would say, scientific consensus, integrating that in our analysis, and also showing the implications, the practical implication of knowledge. So I see social sciences and natural sciences going hand in hand. And I think that is also a major element in this new common research effort we now have in Norway about the Arctic Ocean, to integrate social sciences and natural sciences. It's important for our object, but it's also important for explaining the value of science and securing, of course, support and funding.
But can you explore a little bit more on what you said initially about how your research focus have changed because of recent events?
Well, obviously, when the world changes, the objects also change for sciences that are trying to understand the world. And there are new elements that have come in that were not really so, at least not so central a few years ago. I mentioned hybrid threats, which is a very difficult area to research, precisely because it is so half concealed. And to approach that and try to establish data, it's a hard task, but there are many researchers involved in that. And another area which is in fact gathering quite a lot of attention also internationally is how hybrid threats in the form of false narratives, false information, how that is being spread, how it's being used. You can study the messages, you can study all the methods of spreading it. This is a very important issue for our security. And I can say that there is a lot of research in Scandinavia, but not least in Central Europe, which is feeling this much more closely than we are, doing very interesting research, following how messages come out of one source in Russia and how it's being spread. So this is relatively new objects of research.
So Camilla, going a little bit back to the general topic. So both from experience and different leader positions, you probably have some double vision here, so to say. So you come from academia, per se, so to say, pro-rector of the University of Tromsø. Now you're more in, how to say, the government line with the government institution, Norwegian Polar Institute. So have your perspectives or practices changed in maneuvering these waters, in going from one position to the other?
Well, if I take on the glasses of a governmental agency, I think it's very clear, the setup, the mandate here is very clear. So what we are set to do is to do the science, to produce the results and give the advice to the ministries and to the government. And we are also set to implement decided politics. So basically we are there to enlighten the political discussion, if you want, but we are not taking part in the political discussion. So I think it's very clear. And then with the background as a professor and pro-rector from the university, of course, it's not that confined. You can get more involved in and take on more opinions and that's also part of the mission, I guess, as a free professor with that role. So yeah.
So, but the shift was like this, or did you have to spend a few days, weeks, and months to adjust from the one to the other?
At least overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, talking about big transitions, Jonas. Yes. So University of Tromsø is being an Arctic university in most senses, geographically, in name and in scope and so on. So what has been the most challenging in these times for you personally, going from being the outspoken political scientist to now being top leadership?
Yeah, to answer for the institution, I think it was when Camilla, she was the pro-rector, during the time we had the, as I started mentioning, the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, because that led to a lot of changes overnight for our university. We had, how many agreements did we have with Russian universities?
90 or something?
90 or something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of research, so we had to, and we had completely transform. So that was a major change. And I think with the US situation right now, things are, up in the air. We see that fewer of our researchers want to go to the US, fewer of our students want to go to the US because they're uncertain, they don't know what's going to happen to them. We had had a meeting with the Fulbright director and said, there's not getting a lot of applicants actually, which used to be very high in demand, and these kind of things that are challenging, but not, it's doable. As for me personally, the transition, which is not that long, it's just been a couple of months. It's not as Camilla going from UIT to the Polar Institute, which is much more confined. This is going from, still having a relatively, I'm still a professor in political science, but maybe there's some parts that I don't comment that much on the media. Like, I'm not going to comment who's going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party, for instance, and stuff like that. Because I don't work with whoever's that going to be. But I can still do some statistics analysis and stuff like that, which is interesting, and do a little bit of research, even though I see there's less time than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so as already touched upon by a few of you, so everything seems to be coming together these days, and many of them play out simultaneously and interacting. So you have the politicization or even denial of knowledge, facts. There's the issue of public trust, use of AI, commercial and institutional pressure, ethics and research integrity, and also the global inequities in knowledge and acquisition. And overarching this, we see now countries, particularly Arctic and European, reconsidering their strategic alliances. So what of these issues do you particularly see play together and interact with this geopolitical change? What are the big players, for example, from this list of things I said, of things that are in play in the academic domain? AI, for example, trust, politicization, and so on. Camilla, you want to have a first go?
Yeah, I'm thinking about, of course, polar science. And what I see is that there are more stakeholders, states, kind of newcomers to the table that weren't there, interested in the polar science. Of course, it can have something to do with what your kind of the overarching topic here, connected to the geopolitics, but it can also be connected to the climate change, because what happens in the polar regions matters for the whole globe. So it's kind of, it can be explained in multiple ways, I assume, why we see more stakeholders getting engaged in Arctic and Antarctic research.
Any other takers? Lisa?
So, I mean, from my perspective, as being an Arctic scientist and doing fieldwork for 25 years, I see there is a dramatic change. No, I mean, it was so much easier just to go and do your research. No, it's all, I mean, the geopolitics is coming in. We are to take care of the environment, to be more smart sampling, so we're using AI and drones and all this. And then it's this excess of data that you were used to have, you don't have it anymore. So, I mean, the whole repertoire you were reading is more or less coming into something you have to deal with just if you feel as one scientist want to do this research. So it's become a very complex arena to be in, and as the minister was saying, this also the research council now. I mean, we were used to have this free and open access of data, but no, it's as open as possible, but as close as necessary. So it's a whole landscape that is really changing, and that's, for me, that has been the biggest transition for me, really, to go from a scientist and eager to get data and to move on, adding the knowledge that we need and to put it into this context. Of course, it is interesting that we happen to work in the Arctic, and that's where everything is happening now. But I also think that it's a very important platform, and I mean, also because of the Arctic exceptionalism. So we weren't kind of prepared for it. We thought this was the nice place to be around and do science.
Jonas?
Yeah, I just had a thought here, and this is probably Lisa and Michael probably answer it better than me. But I was wondering, what you said, like if you were in 2005, you were a researcher in 2005, what would be the most different, being a researcher in 2025 or in 1985? Like, because we tend to organize. We see changes things are happening rapidly, but we kind of sometimes forgot that like things have been accelerating extremely fast. So like, I don't know. Like I started as a student in 2005, and I just know that it was a lot different.
Well, computational power.
Yes, computational power. Yeah, it has radically changed the way we did science. So, yeah.
Computational power, but also, I mean, this sharing of data that because I mean, it was okay that you just went along and you did something. I mean, so no, you really have, I mean, to giving it back to the scientific community and to do the collaboration. Personally, I had very close collaboration with Russian because they're super good at taxonomy and biology, etc. And suddenly that's all gone also. So, I mean, it's a lot, but I can't answer your question.
So before Camilla, Mike, Adil, won't you take us a trip down memory road? What do you think? When did things change?
How far back in memory lane?
Yeah, no, 85 is fine.
Too far.
Thank
okay,
you.
good. Well, I was just a slant on this for a moment. There's concern, and we can do the 20 years ahead, 20 years before, and I can do that. And in the 80s, thanks so much for bringing this up. I really appreciate it. But in the 80s, you he had to argue as to why your research in that place called the Arctic, once you pointed it out on a map, like where it was, because nobody, not a whole lot of people were working in these fields, that was really hard, just to tell people that where the Arctic was or where my state of Alaska is. On a weather map, it's off the coast of California with Hawaii, but that's not really where it is. So you have to do that. I don't have to do that anymore. So in some ways, it's really dynamically, it's far different. I can now, unfortunately, use headlines. We can talk about the Arctic. A lot of people know where the Arctic is. They know where Greenland is. They know where Iceland is. They know where Canada is. They know maybe that wasn't like that before. But you can use these times of incredible challenge to then talk about a whole lot of other things. Yeah. We talked about security, and security, the aperture on security's definition should be broadened, right? There's food security, water security. But you can educate now a little bit differently, where in the 80s or 90s it was a little hard to do that. Look, I don't want to be Pollyanna about this. We have difficulties. But that's a dynamic that I think we should seize upon, which is an opportunity to educate, an opportunity to talk about the power of collaboration, an opportunity to talk about the drastic reduction in the Arctic Ocean ice cap and what that means not just for shipping lanes, what it means for this planet and the people who live in the north, the people who live in the south who will be impacted by the fact that that ice pack has shrunk by 50%, its volume's down by X amount. That means a whole lot. So there's opportunities here, I think, to educate as we work through this very dynamic time. I'm not sure I answered any question you posed, but
you went a little Arctic at the end, but it was fine
okay, good.
from the start. Yeah.
The 80s threw me off a little bit.
Odell, please. Yes.
Yeah. Well, even if I appreciate Mike's comment about this advancement in knowledge, I must say that there is still surprisingly many, I would say, really relatively well-educated people who are very, very uncertain about where the Arctic is. Mm-hmm. And we, at my institute, experience that a lot because we have a lot of requests from media, not least in the last few months. And we're talking about major media. I won't name them, won't blame them, but journalists who have these ideas, preconceptions about the Arctic and what's going on, and they're going to Svalbard to have that confirmed. And they are basically without basic knowledge. Mm-hmm. So, again, everybody needs to keep that in mind. You have, again and again, also explain sort of the basics. There is, of course, big advancement, and probably the general knowledge level is much higher than in 1985, but we cannot take it for granted that even a sort of a broad audience always understand what we're talking about.
Lisa?
I just have to comment on that because I think you're completely right. When I started working in this European Academy Science Advisory Council, it was, and when we were working on science reports, it was mainly things that was interesting for the continent. So it was agricultural and terrestrial things. And so when I was saying that what we need to care about the ocean, the Atlantic, so I was initiating the report that you actually was leading on the Atlantic realm, also deep sea mining, and also so I'm now really trying to work to get the Europe interested in the Arctic because it's such an important part of the Arctic. Very good with Sweden and Finland getting into NATO. And we also heard the minister today that she was really talking of the responsibility that Europe have for the Arctic, both in the polar and the climate issue, but also on the security. So yeah, you're complete. It's not that far ago since it wasn't it was remote and it wasn't really part of the core.
So continuing a little on that tangent. So Mike, how far do you find U.S. in general to be from Alaska and the Arctic more in general? Is the Arctic an American identity?
No. The Arctic is not an American identity.
Is Alaska an American identity?
We have an independent streak. Yeah. Yes, of course. The Alaska is, but it is a very different place. I mean, you have to, you don't tolerate living there. You love it, or you find yourself not wanting to be there. It's like the rest of the North. It takes a special, I'm sure, in the South as well. Yeah, mindset. But very proud. I would say here's not just a commercial for my state, but sure, okay. But very proud of the fact that Alaska sits, I believe, at the nexus of U.S. domestic and foreign policy. If you look at the map, we are close. We share a maritime border with Russia. There's 50+ miles between the two. We're a Pacific nation because of Alaska, of course, the west coast of the United States. We're relevant in a number of different ways in the north, not just because of the Russian Federation, but we're concerned about missiles and hypersonics and other matters related to North Korea. You have China in the Bering Sea, the Bering Strait, the North Pacific, Russia there, Russia and China together there. So, there's a pride of being an integral part of homeland security and homeland defense of the United States. Yes, part of NATO, part of NORAD with our Canadian partners, and being sort of a bookend to NATO with Greenland. There's a real connection there. And let's not lose sight of the fact that Alaska, Canada, Greenland, they're one peoples in that north. That binds us together. But in terms of identity, very much so, Alaskans see themselves as Americans. You have to explain to average Americans in Iowa where Alaska is and why they should care. But again, the news cycles provide tidbits. It's up to us to educate.
Okay, Jonas.
I just would say that I went to Wichita University 3 years ago, and I would strongly recommend going to Alaska if you haven't been there. It's really a fascinating place, but it's a bit of I would say it's some similarities to Northern Norway in many aspects, but it's a bit more I would call it a frontier experience. Frontier, and I did some research a couple of years ago with some. I think Scott, the guy's name. He had this interesting theory about people moving away. There's something about the mind, people moving away, so seeking independence. So the independence streak, staying away from central authorities, is kind of like a core. You thought the Americans were freedom loving? Well, you haven't been to Alaska.
So one or two more things I will put at you, and then I think we have a go at the audience for a little exchange. Yeah. So Jonas, you kind of stole my point, but anyway, I have prepared for this. So we are very much about this urgency of now. Never before has things been as urgent or whatever they are now. But do we have a tendency of overstating this urgency? Or are we a little bit blind to know that it concerns us? There has been dramatic events before.
Yes.
Relatively recently. So how major is these things we are experiencing these days?
Yes, I think both things can be true at the same time. I think it's just important to be conscious about that there has been a lot of changes. Like in '85, the Soviet Union was still existing. But at the same time, what we're seeing in the last year, especially in the US, is really dramatic, and it's really cause for concern, and it really requires a lot from us who believe in liberal democracy, who believe in the value of science, who believe in having a well-functioning world order. So it is challenging, and we're not going to hide from it. But if things are challenging, then you cannot give up. And as I talked yesterday about, if you're let's be honest, U.S. has been a great friend of Norway and Europe for decades and for centuries. And if you're seeing a friend having some problems, what would you do in your life if you're seeing a friend having trouble at his home, domestic fight or whatever? You won't cut his hand off. You will try to help. You will try to say, how can we make things better? How can you get through this patch of uncertainty and maybe get to a better place? And using constructive ways of getting around. And here, I think science can be a good way, because I think we can still manage to do good science and do good cooperations with people who share the same state of mind.
Do you really think that the US is receptive for that kind of help from Norway?
No, I don't think that the Norwegian government. Our prime minister went there to show some maps about the Arctic, etc. to Trump. I'm not sure how that went, but I think we, as a research communities, with our collaborators from the U.S., can do something. I'm not talking about the government but I'm talking about we as the royalty.
But talking about being, I'm not sure which phrase you used, disappointed or surprised by our biggest friend, have we, in some sense, not being appreciative enough in being a friend? If you look at international research cooperation, the US has been leading in so many ways, in so many places, in volume, capacities, and so on. And now that they are withdrawing from some of them, which in some sense is a voluntary thing, we kind of stand there surprised. Oh, this is not fair, but it is a common activity. It is. So didn't we really appreciate it when we had it? Camilla, you go first.
What I'm thinking about is the importance of the long time series here. So we are maintaining some of them. US has been involved. That is very important to be able to detect the changes that are happening in climate, environment, ecosystem, etc. So this is very important to have an eye on and not break.
Yeah, but you have this spectacular example of these deep sea monitoring Argo floats that gives us, how to say, the state and health and nutrients and whatever of the deep ocean. There's 5,000 plus of them in the world ocean. And US have provided more than half of these. So should we have been more generous in appreciating it? And should we come faster forward now to try to fill what they might leave a little behind? Adil?
I understand your reasoning, but if this was about the US forcing other countries to pay more in cooperative projects, you might understand it in the framework you're talking about. But as we hear from Mike and others, the current US policy is more like a wholesale attack on science. So it isn't about sharing of costs. It's about the role of science. And of course, I believe that one of the strengths of US soft power has been leadership in science. So, from my perspective, the US policy is extremely negative for US US position in the world. That's a longer discussion.
But Mike, please break in when we Norwegians explain US.
Okay.
Okay, Jonas.
I'm learning a lot.
No, but I think to clarify, to expand on what Arild was saying, I think for us, I think it's of course the attack on science, but if it was just a question of money, that's another thing. That's just money, how much you pay. But I think what a lot of people are struggling with is the disdain that you see displayed towards Europeans and towards science, if you want to say, which I think it's much more from the leadership. If you saw you were there when J.D. Vance held his speech in Munich, the disdain that is shown towards European leadership, that's a whole different ballgame than if you disagree how much money you're spending on certain things or defense or research or whatever. I think that's a difference. And yeah.
Lisa, and then this gentleman in the second row waiting for a microphone.
Well, I don't think we could foresee the way US have changed. There have been so much infrastructure, so much good science that have been built over a year. As the president of the academy, we're also handing out prizes in the Kavli prizes and Nobel prizes, and most of the prizes and Nobel prizes, they go to labs and research groups in the US because they have a long tradition of building up international competence and etc. So I think we were, at least I was, not prepared that this responsibility would stop. and that they wouldn't continue keeping this data available and curating of data. I see, things that I've been used to, database I've used every day, no, they're not, I get this warning, it's not curated, you can't really trust on these things. So I wouldn't foresee that before. So I think that it's something with the whole political system now that is changed, and we have been just not thinking it will happen. So I think that comes as a surprise. But my point again is that we can't just wait and hope that it will get back to normal, because what's normal, we don't know that anymore. So I think we need to find alternatives. We need to, again, work maybe more collaborate with those that you can trust and you can collaborate with.
But should we have appreciated it more while we had it?
Probably yes.
Okay.
But I guess that's
Very
your...
easy with hindsight.
Yeah.
So, gentlemen on the second row, please state your name and purpose.
Thank you. Liv Lønsmann, I'm a journalist from Denmark. I was a student not in the 1980s, but actually in the 1970s.
Okay.
And I can assure all of you young people up there that the tensions weren't less in 1975, 13 years after the Cuba crisis. That's the equivalent of time since the Crimea annexation. Nevertheless, after the Helsinki Agreement in 1975, the Eastern and the Western countries, dictatorships and Democrats alike, and Democrats were only 17 countries in Europe those days. Rest was dictatorships from Spain to the Soviet Union. Nevertheless, in 1975, 35 nations signed an agreement in Helsinki to continue to agree that they disagreed on all geopolitical aspects, but they also agreed to open up for science, for education, for tourism, and for media. Why is it more difficult in 2025 than it was in 1975?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Why is it more difficult to reinstall this exemption for science, education, tourism, and media, which was installed in 1975? Those days, despite the political tensions, despite the Cold War, despite the unpredictability of the world and insecurity of the world, despite that, the nations in Europe, Soviet Union and Western Europe, accepted openness and exchange and collaboration and open borders within science, education, tourism, and media. Is it possible to just do the same thing in 2025?
We start with the ambassador, maybe, and then other, or the other way. It looks like. Yeah, you look like you were thinking.
Did I look like I was thinking?
Yeah.
Let me know what that looks like, because I'd like to do that. I don't know that I have the answer. I think I have some thoughts about it. One is the speed at which information circles this globe. I think social media is a part of it, but I also think the information and disinformation, the clutter and the character of our politics are frayed. We've heard the word rupture coming out of Davos. The level of trust among allies has frayed. I don't know that there is any one single thing aside from the shock to the system. Economically, the shock to the system in the new security world we live in, I think overall disinformation, it's permeated all of our cultures. This is not just one nation or one continent. So I don't know that I have the right answer or any answer to this, aside from political will from those countries that see the value in the areas that you talked about, including a free press, including the free transmission of knowledge and data, free speech, and I'm very concerned about a return to authoritarianism and to dictatorships where, that says something about democracy, because democracy is an idea, and it's not a command and control when done in the way in which we've thought about democracies in the past. And you get the good and the bad with democracies. So I don't know, but I still remain, even though it is difficult to be optimistic, I still believe that there's a difference between administrations and peoples. And so I think I don't know when, but I think there'll be a rebalancing because people do crave to have those things that we perhaps had just a little bit ago, the protection of freedom of speech, journalists doing their job, holding leadership accountable. We may be seeing trends, but we've seen them before in my country and others. I don't have an answer, I just have thoughts.
Adil,
Well, it's
more?
tempting, but always dangerous to draw historical comparisons. You ask what's the difference between now and 1975. Well, in 1975, the main thing was for the Soviet Union to get a confirmation of the borders after World War II. In exchange, they accepted the liberalization in the areas you mentioned. So that was the big deal. And of course, the big difference today is there's a big war going on in Europe.
That was in 75 too.
Not in Europe.
Greece and Turkey.
That is what small stuff compared to. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is that the agreements made in Helsinki are still in force. The openness that was agreed. It is supposedly still the rules of the day. So you could say they could be reinterpreted, but basically they are in force. Not okay. But anyway, I think the major question is there somewhere is the possibility to build a new bridge over to Russia with finding some sort of common ground. I find it very difficult to discuss that when you have the war going on in Ukraine.
Camilla, and then we had someone with a microphone thereafter.
I think it was a very interesting question, almost impossible to answer just like that. But there are two things that comes to my mind since you talk about the 1970s. What has happened since then? Globalism and digitalization. So these two things, I believe those matters, but I can't answer the question.
Comment, question, please.
Ranveig Hjaltadóttir, Associate Professor at North University. I want to get back to the trust in science and the difference between government and people. So what about the people and trust in science? We see signs of diminishing trust. We see journalism more interested in cancellation and retractions of papers. It's getting every month in general news. So how are we going to deal with that part? Because government have to respond and adjust to the public. How are we going to help build trust in science in the general public?
Yeah. Jonas first, okay?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think there might be somehow interconnected. One of the key findings from trust research or trust in government is that it's the satisfaction with government services is the key, or the quality of government. It's a Swedish guy called Bo Rothstein who wrote a lot about this kind of stuff. So needing to have good quality, good services is kind of the key. And that's been a lot of the problem. Like we talked about what happened in the US. In 2024, all incumbent governments lost their elections in democratic countries. The inflation, the energy prices caused by the Russian war, caused a lot of problems for governments all around the globe. So, but at the same time, science, what we need to talk about is what science has actually done to create human progress. And I think that's something that we, and Ari said about social scientists who work with natural scientists, we all need to tell that story about the achievements that science has made for human care. Like, we see it every day. We see, like, diseases that killed people in like a lot of people, thousands, millions, hundreds of thousands, a couple years ago. Now it's just like you get a shot from science, from a vaccine, and it's gone. These kind of things. We saw during the COVID crisis, where science, groundbreaking science, like the basic science, was a key for creating the vaccine that saved hundreds and thousands of lives across the globe. which was an amazing achievement made possible by science. And these kind of stories, I think, is quintessential that we all manage to tell the people.
Camilla, you had...
Trust in science. I think it's something that is obvious that every scientist has to take care of, and that is the integrity of the data, the results, the methods, and all that. But then, on the other side, trust in science also has to do with what is the taxpayers' money used for? Why are we doing this? And that has to do with conveying your results and showing the relevance of what you're doing in science.
We had a comment over there, question. Do we also have a microphone? Oh, sorry, you're ahead of me. Please.
Can I go first?
Then you next.
Okay, my name is Svanir. I'm a student at the university, and I also am the president of YATA. It's an organization for young people that are interested in foreign policy, security politics, and defense politics. So I spend a lot of time with young people who wants to do something in these fields and are very interested in the geopolitical landscape. But very rarely do I hear them say that they want to go into academia. They often talk about becoming diplomats, like going to Brussels maybe go to work in the departments. And of course now we're talking about like the science is in a crisis, or like the science field. Like, how would you recruit young people for a career in science? Why would they want to go and work there right now, as it is?
Lisa, the practicing professor.
I mean, we are, with all the changes that we are facing today, the science is very close to development of the society. So I think that we need to build the bridges from the science to the society. And I think that there are still so many things that the science is important, that can also help us with a lot of the challenges we are facing at the moment. But I do, but kind of taking this back also to the trust in science also, because why should we do it? It's so much fake news now, it's so much, why should we really invest in going into that? So with this openness and also I think something on the communication of the science, that is also easier to understand why we're doing it and what is the consequence of it. I also think at the moment, as you were mentioning, the importance of interdisciplinarity is also very, very important. We know the climate crisis. If we're going to do something with it, we need to have a social acceptance of why we should go in different direction, why we should reduce the footprint, and why should I have a worse life? I mean, all these things, the consequences of the decisions that you're making. So this interaction, I think, is very important. As a scientist, we're working on science for policy. So I think that's, and I see that there are much more younger generation now interested in actually coming in and work on the science for policy, which I think is very good. But I don't have an answer to what to do. But we need to communicate. We need to try to say why this is important.
But particularly those of your students that you see move on to take an academic career, what excites them to go all the way?
I mean, my students?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we just so much fascinating, and especially in the Arctic, so much fascinating biology, high activity at low temperature in the complete darkness. It's so much novelties there we don't have, and I think it's so much solutions to some of the challenges that we are facing.
So I think this is more the excitement we need to...
Yes,
yeah.
So my students get excited.
Yeah, I just want to answer a question from Svanhild, which I think is a great question. I'm going to allow myself to be a little bit personal, because I think it's, I did a political science. I'm not sure your background, but a lot of people who do these kind of things are political scientists. I did actually try a bit of being acting politicians, and actually did experience that. But I returned and came back to academia, because I think it's an amazing privilege being working with science, because especially in that kind of field, you get to go in depth and really challenge yourself, and you get to meet people from all around the globe who are really as fascinated as you are about these kind of things, and you gain an expertise and a knowledge that when you come out on the other side can be really useful for shaping policy, shaping government, and being able to do a difference. So I think it's, yeah, I'm so lucky I'm going to be on an expert committee doing the PhD graduate, and in order how to get more young people wanting to do a PhD, because I think it's a fantastic experience. And if you come out on the other side, it's going to be a much better career. And I think, Mike, you have experienced some of the same thing, going from doing science to academia. No, from academia to being an ambassador.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's a great question. And I don't know of a place that's more magical than a classroom, period. I mean, to me, I love in the Arctic, of course. But, but I've taught students, and there's just nothing more exciting than to have that engagement with students and the discovery, better, the debate. It just is a magical place. And so it's not for everybody. It's just not. Labs are for some, maybe politics, but to engage those who want to have not just a knowledge base, but keep asking the questions. I really don't know a more magical place than the classroom. It is fantastic. But you have to be drawn in by somebody who thinks it's fantastic. And so that's where the mentors come in. It's incumbent upon us to reach out and to answer the knock on the door and be asked that question, but also it's incumbent upon us to build the next generation of teachers, researchers, faculty members, politicians. It's incumbent upon us, especially in the Arctic. The Arctic bench is not a big bench. It just isn't. We have to grow that. So I think it's incumbent upon those who have had great mentors to pass that on a bit, to grow the next generation, and maybe you go back and forth, because a lot do. A lot of faculty go on to be politicians, policymakers, and then they go back to the classroom. There's a reason, and it's healthy. You see the cycles, at least in American universities. Think about who's at Harvard, who's at Yale, who's at Caltech, and then who's in the administrations, and just watch them churn, and it's a good churn, I think, going between the academy and policymakers and politicians. That's how you breathe life into policy and think differently, and that's how you grow the next generation of those, I think, wonderful teachers out there and wonderful academics.
And if I,
Well, thank you.
and if I just can allow myself one small comment on this, also from the teacher or professor side, after a 2-hour lecture and the students still meet your eye, you really have won you're as happy as you can be.
That's the best mic drop you can have, yeah.
Question over there, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great panel discussion and also for the brilliant questions. I'm Helmi and I'm from the University of Helsinki. I wanted to ask some life advice from you, going back to this friend analogy. We have probably all been in a debate or an argument with a friend, feeling like we have the true, real information, and this friend just doesn't understand what we are saying, and it's only about us explaining how it is, and then they will believe and we'll all agree. I don't think that it will help teaching the friend how the world actually is if they don't want to hear that. But at the same time, it might make me or anyone else feel like, you know what, I just don't have the energy to explain. I just want to escape this situation and just like be in my little bubble and like not have this debate. So how do you think that we as scientists should react to the kind of situation where there might not be appetite to hear the scientific information?
Yeah. Okay, even Jonas is hesitant.
No, I can try to explain. I think it's an interesting question. Going back to life, it's like you want a life advice. You know, sometimes in life you have to deal with people who you're not really going along that well with. And you have to be in situations where you have to be able to cooperate, with somebody who you have profound disagreements on with maybe, but then you might need to say that, okay, we can cooperate on these issues, but not on everything. As you say, you can agree to disagree on certain things. And fortunately, like, these are not only individuals. Like when we talk about countries, you can often talk about the leader, but there are, 350 million Americans. And only like 80 million of them voted for Trump. So I think so these kind of things I don't envy the European leaders who have to deal, or the Canadian leaders who have to deal with these kind of things. But that's the world we are in. We can wish for another world, but that's not the world we are in. And as scientists, of course, you can choose in some kind of a respect, like where you want to go or pursue. Like, of course, that's an individual choice you can do, and we're not going to, as university leaders, we're not going to force you to cooperate with anybody you don't want to cooperate with or anything. So, but unless there are on your department where you have to find some solutions, even though you don't like the face of the other guy. So that's, yeah.
I think it's important that, this is not, change change. I don't, this is not a lecture, I'm thinking out loud here. I don't want us, the collective us, to think that what is currently happening is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. And so I really hope that, me included, that universities, research institutions, citizens of other nations, colleagues and friends, all the international cooperation from the Arctic Council on, okay, all of these multilateral organizations. I know that the current administration prefers bilateral. I prefer multilateral, but I'm not in charge. So I just do not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, I guess is the message. I know it's frustrating, trust me. I know that it's uncertain, I know that. I know that there have been ruptures and frays, and it's everything from intense security issues with NATO and the EU and America's place in the world, and we're in a multipolar world. I know, are we moving to spheres of influence? All of those things, I get it. And it's uncertain because for most of our lives, it has not been that way. Since World War II, we have built the framework that we know. I get it. But I really would caution all of us, I have to caution myself, just let's try to work through this, and let's keep the institutions and the connections and the cooperation and the participation that we have grown over decades in the North. Let's do our best to keep these together at whatever level, because this is not going to be like this forever, whatever this is and whatever tomorrow is going to be. I think the reason that we have prided ourselves in the North is because we have close personal connections, right? It's a big neighborhood and a small community up here, all of us. And so I just hope that the rupture can be bridged for a while, and that institutions and organizations remain cooperative. We keep doing our work together. And we keep advancing the issues of the North for the North, and we work through this. Again, not a lecture, but I just don't want us to walk out from this wonderful conference and think that what is happening today is going to be 10 years from now. It's incumbent upon us for that not to be, and me included in all of that.
Okay, so before the gentleman with the turtleneck gets a go at the microphone, I need to go through some of the things I prepared for this. And it's a little bit of a stretch, but it kind of connects with what you guys were just talking about now. So there was a certain speech in Davos by the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, that made headlines, and at least initially a lot of enthusiasm across the political spectrum. And countries. But this value-based realism, you said something like, sometimes we just need to work with people and stuff we can work together with, and then try to forget about the rest. So this value-based realism, or as he said, to put another way, we aim to be both principled and pragmatic. this seems a little bit of a stretch. Like, as long as I can do my stuff at home, I can trade with most people. Isn't this like endorsing a multilateralism consistent with China's approach?
Well, basically, he conceded that given the situation, countries like Canada need to have a pragmatic approach to other countries. And we know that, for instance, Canada has had very strained relations with China. When they go out and sign a big trade agreement, it's not the best of worlds, maybe, but what can they do when their main trading partner is threatening to cut off trade? So it's a realistic policy. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's a realistic.
And what do you foresee about these Canada or Canadians moving more towards the Nordic countries?
Well, that's an expressed goal, as far as I understand. And yes, there are a lot of things in common, and not least values. But in terms of economic cooperation, of course, there are limitations in Northern Europe. But I certainly think we will see a lot of increased contact with Canada, both politically, culturally, and commercially. But it cannot replace U.S., of course.
Jon Børre?
Thanks, Tor. My name is Jon Børre Ørbeck. I come from the Research Council. So I'm just wondering if academia really is on the winning team at the moment. You know, we know that science is under pressure, trust and truth. And are we good enough in connecting sufficiently well to society, to the man in the street that is trying to understand what happens? Or do we work sufficiently good enough with translating our scientific knowledge into actionable knowledge? You mentioned it already, this science to policy, but I think also science to society is important. We heard a very strong message in the big picture session from a strong message from a very brave scientist in the US. She called for action, but at the same time we know that the majority probably of her colleagues, they have a very strong self-censorship. They are not going into the street. Maybe they sign some documents, but they're not really shouting loud. So if the strategy is to do this fight in the legal courts, I think they will lose. So my question is, what is the recommendation for academia? Do we need to work more to fund more science to society, something that moves this elitistic work into society, to the man in the street? Do we need to do more towards this actionable knowledge? Do we need to burn more cars in the street? I don't know. You don't know either. What should we do?
I mean, it's a big question. It's and there are at the moment we have a challenge. There are a lot of scientists that are under threats even, and the communication of the science is very important. But it's also about the trust, that because there's so much social media and things that is going. So it's this fake news, real news, trust in science, and all these things, and that needs to be lifted. But I also think that again, join forces. I think that's the key to this, to collaborate and to get the best scientists, so that you have everything evaluated and approved, and that you can make reports. And then, as I was also mentioning, the communication, the words we're using, the way to try to connect with the society. So, I mean, we have been trying this citizen science to engage also the society there. But at the moment we are having a challenge because there is quite a few countries. I mean, the number of democracy is decreasing very high at the moment. So it's a lot of scientists that have challenging every days at the moment. So then the rest needs to join forces and to work together, which I think is very important. But it's not a quick fix. It will take time also to get this out and to, yeah.
But here's a cheap shot from my side. So almost all or most of these leaders we are not happy with. They come from university. So where did we fail in their education? Because those people we think or describe as remote or ignorant to us, most of them come from a university education. How's that?
Yeah, but that historically, some of the worst authoritarian leaders have university backgrounds. So that's I don't think university can save everybody. Sorry, science cannot save everybody having a universal degree. But yeah, I think your question, just to be quick, because I know there's other questions, but just quick. I think we, as a community, scientific community, has a responsibility to, and that's also kind of what we talked about with liberal democracy. You kind of understand that it's not something that you have achieved at one point, and then everybody would just know that this is great, and you should just keep on doing it. You have to tell it over and over and over again. What is your science actually doing? What is liberal democracy doing? Why is this working? Yeah.
You know, I just, an observation, maybe, I don't know, it's a thought. Certainly isn't an answer. I just find it fascinating that we live in a time when I can do more on this phone than you, I mean, there's more power on this than the United States used to make Apollo 11 land on the moon. And so we live in a time of technology. It's not even wonder. It's just, I don't even know how this stuff works. I mean, I have no idea. I still have a VCR that blinks at me. I don't know how this stuff works. We live in this age of incredible technological innovation, quantum, AI, all of this. And yet we're still in a position where we have to explain why you want to invest in research and science when it's the very thing that has changed the world. I don't have an answer. It's an observation. It just hits you in the face. It hits me in the face all the time that we have to argue to or defend or do the value proposition on investing in basic research when it's basic research that had brought us vaccines, AI, quantum, computer chips, running our world. It's taken for granted that you hit your watch and it talks to you. I mean, this is Dick Tracy stuff, right, at comic books. But we have it. It's Star Trek. We're living it. And so I just find it amazing that we have to do this value proposition in a time when literally our lives, every day, we touch this stuff all the time, but it's a given that it's there.
Yeah. Please.
My name is Tanya. I'm from Sweden. I'm a journalist there, and I speak Russian, so I do a lot of Ukraine-Russia interviews and pieces. And when the war started, I actually work at SVT, Swedish television, and I was listening a lot to independent Russian media, radio. And there was one Russian, I don't know if you know him, Dmitry Muratov. He actually won a Nobel Prize, Nobel Prize winner. He is, and he was talking how sanctions from European Union impact cancer treatment of children in Russia. And I kind of didn't believe him because he was talking that children in Russia can't anymore get cancer treatment because of the sanctions from that EU, European Union, was imposing. So I actually talked to the cancer organization in Russia who was treating Russian kids with cancer. And actually what they told me was that it's not Russian sanctions that impact them, but it's their German, for example, they worked a lot, like this company, they worked a lot with Germany. So the sanctions by European Union, imposed by European Union, make it impossible for their German colleagues to kind of import or export the cancer treatments to Russia. So those companies now, I don't know how it works now, but like in 2022, for how many, 4 years ago, they told me that they have to choose what kid will live and what kid will die. So that was like, I get a lot of threats after this piece because people thought that it was morally wrong to do this kind of journalism. But I mean, it's about kids who are like from 1 to 7 years old, and they don't really have so much impact on what Putin is doing and thinking. And when you talk about this science collaboration, my main question is, you cannot collaborate with Russia in Russian sciences because of the sanctions or because of your moral compass. Thank you.
I mean, because of the sanction, we can't collaborate with them. So it's. I mean, we can more collaborate one-to-one, but not when we're working with organizations. Then it's impossible. Yeah. But I mean, it's what you're describing is also it's of course very difficult, but it's yeah.
Is it sanctions from the US or EU, European Union, or from Russia?
I mean, we work with European networks, so it has to be inside the European Union and Norway and Switzerland, etc. But it's all these. Everybody has again from the national governmental restrictions. So it's again this one-to-one. You can collaborate one-to-one, but not on this overall. But I don't know how this policy then is ending up with this regulation that you're working. What we want is to have a network of the science, the quality of science per se, so that we get what is the state of the knowledge at the moment. That's what we try to get out, and that should be the basis for the decisions for the politicians to take.
Yeah, I think the sanctions are put in place by Europe because of and Norway are following the sanction. And the reason why the sanctions are put in place is that Russia are bombing innocent Ukrainian children and killing them every single day. And it would be so easy, if you want to have the cancer thing, it would be so easy for the Russian president just stop the war, and then the sanction would have been lifted. That's it.
That was a little heavy. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Simone Ehringfeld. I'm a final year PhD student at the Scott Polar Research Institute in Cambridge, UK. I was very interested in what you were saying earlier about recruiting more people into PhD programs and encouraging more people to enter science fields. You also called for more interdisciplinary work, more social sciences. I think I'm a good example of someone who is in social sciences and whose work is transdisciplinary and does a lot of science communication. I'm about to finish my PhD, would be interested in pursuing an academic career, but in my impression, this is almost impossible. I have seen around me colleagues who have been finishing their PhDs and wanting to move into postdocs, etc., etc. And they only, if they are successful, find a position after 88 applications or something crazy like this. It's actually really difficult for people in social sciences to pursue a career in polar research. So I was interested in hearing what you were saying, because it sounds like maybe perhaps in Norway it's a different situation, but I can hear the things that you're calling for. I agree, very important to do all of this interdisciplinary work, but for someone like me it's actually almost impossible and very discouraging. So what are your perspectives on this?
Yeah, I think it was me. I think great question. I think it's really, I know that just for young researchers, it can be really, really tough. And academia is really, really tough. It's very competitive, and it's a very, there's a lot of competition for a lot of work. And I know that, I have many colleagues, I've been, around Europe, and they would often, sometimes they would need to do one postdoc, maybe two postdocs, having to able to move around. And it varies across the different kind of disciplines. Some are more competitive than others. But Yeah, I think it's important to do good research, and maybe and usually I think if you do good research, things tend to, in Norwegian we say, det ordner seg for snille piker, flinke piker. It's, you know, if you're doing, good boys, if they're doing good work, you usually tend to at least end somewhere good. And
also reach out and get in contact.
Reach out and get in contact.
With environments that you think.
Okay, so time is running out now. So Camilla and the rest of you guys, if you want to respond to this or whatever you want to say as your final go. So Camilla.
Just wanted to say hard work, stamina, a little bit of luck.
Mike?
Yeah, don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged.
Arild?
Well, I think you need to be very focused on where there is demand for research, and try to focus your sort of your postdoc in that direction, and then there might be openings.
Final, Lisa?
I was just going to continue because it was interdisciplinary works are not so easy to get as if you go. So that's why I was saying try to get to the environments that actually are working and try to be in dialogue there.
Okay, 1.5 hours. Thank you so much for staying with us, audience. Thank you so much to the panel. Thank you.